Hello, welcome to episode 141 in this series where I'm programming an NES game live on Twitch. Let's get right into it. Last time we were working through the writing of the metatiles, and then we were also looking at the way that these metatiles work in this project file and how the asset tool processes them, and I got sort of sidetracked by some things, and ultimately what we need to do is make it so that we are no longer dependent on the metatiles being in this format here in this file, and instead come from when we parse the map and output the metatiles that I just deleted on this command line, but seemed a little bit more complicated than I thought it would be when we were kind of working with this last time, and like I said, I got sidetracked. So hopefully this time we will this stream we will get this part working, and then, as I mentioned on Twitter, after that the next thing is to get this into, make sure this is working on the NES side, and then start implementing some actual game design stuff. I had some ideas about how the actual gameplay will work, so we'll start implementing the core gameplay mechanic of how how the game will progress. Like, everything is going to be built around, I think, the idea that I had, which I'll explain when we actually get to implementing it, because it's not worth getting into right now necessarily, because we're still focused on fixing this problem. So let's do that, and then we can touch on that as we need to here. So let me switch views here, so if anybody writes in the chat, it shows up, and let's get going here. So going back to this, when we load our project file, one of the things we do is we look at this project file list. We check to see if the file exists and what kind of file it is. And if it's a metatile file, then we actually load the metatile into the game metatiles here, and we do some additional setup, and then we increment that. So that gets put into this export map functionality here, which, if we go to that, that's where we were actually, I believe, doing our load of the map. Right, this is an export. Yeah. So in here, we're actually loading the map and processing it, and this is the code that we changed last time, or in the last several streams, to handle the process of looking at the map content and processing it, turning it into metatiles, and exporting it into a series of metatile files, which we want to then pull into what we're doing. Now, the challenge is that the way that our workflow was previously, we were passing those in to this function here. So what we want to do now is we actually want to change this behavior, right? So what we want to do is we want to get rid of this from the signature, because we'll no longer be passing it in. And instead, we will be defining it here. What we probably want to take a look at is how we actually call export map. We're passing this game metatiles thing. Where is this defined? Okay, so this is allocated at the beginning of what, the load here. So that's fine. What we'll do instead is we're going to steal all of this stuff here, because this is really no longer relevant to what we're doing in this section of the code, and instead we want to do this here. So We've initialized that. If we go back to where export map is called, we don't need to pass this any longer. And of course, by the fact that we're passing it creates problems, so that's why the compiler highlighted everything. All right, so that's that. There's going to be problems here where we're actually trying to find the files here based on the type being metatile. I'm going to comment this part out in case we need to come back to it because, you know, we never know. Maybe there's going to be a situation where we want to predetermine and pre-feed some metatiles in through the project. But given that we are no longer doing this, I think, will this let us comment out without any problems? It doesn't like that. Surprised. Comments are okay. So we can't do anything about that. We're just going to get rid of that. That's fine. You know what? Let's open up Sourcetree. I want to take a look and see. This is where I start getting a little bit more nervous. I want to make sure that we are able to revert some things back if we need to. So let's take a look. So I don't actually see, oh right, because I have it in, I don't have any of this stuff in here. Well, that's weird because I thought, oh I see, these are just the ASprite files. I mean, that's, I guess that part's not so, well, I can comment, as long as I can comment out the C++ code, I'm less worried about that. It was more the JSON content, which, I mean, I can always, let me do this. Let me, is there a way to duplicate this file in here? We'll do the old-fashioned way. Just keep a backup of it there. Hopefully we won't need that. We can delete it, but... Alright, so that gets rid of that, so it's no longer going to be reading those in. We should probably even disable the code that looks for that in the JSON of the project. I think it's in load project, where it actually looks for the metatile section. Did I miss it? Project files. That's sprite type. Oh, I already did that. Good. Okay. So and then we're not bothering to check that there because we're not passing it in to the export. So the export now gets us into this. So what we want to do, where is this defined? Map metatiles. So refresh my memory. What is the difference between map metatiles versus game metatiles? It gets allocated here. Right, so this is where it looks for the metatiles that are based on the PNGs that are loaded into the map. And it does a bunch of stuff here to process it, but that's really no longer relevant because there's only the one for the level. So I think the question is, can we maybe eliminate map metatiles? Because let's see, if we do that, then what do we use that for? Map metatile to file system. Okay, so we can't quite get rid of it because we have the file list. But that's no longer relevant for metatiles, right? Because it doesn't need to find that it was actually mapped. So I've kind of built this whole structure around the fact that you have it in the project file and you're mapping to that to determine the reason, or not determine, but it's mapped into here, and you're using that to kind of marry up the PNG and the metatile, but we essentially are building the metatiles ourselves. I mean, literally that's what we're doing, so that's not really necessary anymore for that functionality. So just wondering if we have to even do this anymore. This is the part that kind of slowed me down last time, and why we ended the stream a little bit early. It was because it was already late, and it was kind of not 100% understanding the correlation of all the things that are here. All right, so let's go back to where we call this, and then we populate this map metatiles, and the map metatiles, we're iterating through all the populated ones, and then we're mapping it to the file systems, and then if it's an object and the export ID is 0, then loop through the map objects, and right, so if it's an object, well, that is going to be different, right? So that actually, you know what, that brings up an interesting point, which is that when we place enemies on the screen, do they need to be part of this tile sheet, or would they be their own image? I would think that I would want them to be part of this tile sheet here, because ultimately it's better to keep everything together. Even though, I mean, technically it's a slight waste of resources on the PC, that really doesn't matter, because, I mean, you're just talking about a PNG file. It's not a big deal. So, and then the benefit of doing that is that none of this has to happen, right? What we're doing here is we're looping through to map the metatiles that are part of this map metatiles structure to the objects that we've loaded to make to correlate the game object to the map resource that we have loaded here. So do we use that anywhere else? Map metatiles. Yeah, we use it down here. And what do we do with this? This is GID -1 because the tileset index starts at 1, not 0. So this is where it's going through the process of what is this doing? Start height equals map height -7. S object. So this is writing out export the entity type for the okay, so this is writing out the object list of the things that are on the map. So that makes sense why that's reused there. And then anywhere else? Yeah, we're using it here again. We're using it here again for the actual metatiles. And we convert the metatile over to a character, to the NES character format. So maybe we do want to use this, although it's so kind of backwards now based on the way that we're doing this, because we're generating our metatiles ourselves. It's not really necessary to do this. I mean, for sorry about the silence here for a moment. I'm just thinking through this process and really trying to understand what needs to happen here for this. So basically we're going to come into here now with none of that information set up. So we don't know anything about any files. The metatile files haven't been generated yet. So when we go into load map, we're going to process everything in here. We're going to look for the tile sets part of the map, which is this here, which is just this one thing. Which is actually just this. And it's going to find this PNG. And then we're going to get the absolute path of the file. That's for the tile set. And then we're going to convert it to JSON, and then we're going to grab the image file. I mean, I assume that this part actually works as expected to get the PNG. I'm just still not 100% sure that we actually want that. I'm still trying to kind of formulate if this is what the right solution is to this at the moment. Partially because I started working on this part of it so long ago that I don't really fully even remember how I would go about undoing some of this. So hope you're all having a good evening and a good week, or had a good week, had a good past week. Hope your week coming up goes better. Goes good, goes better. If it wasn't a good week, why isn't this, is this doing something? What is this doing? Is this doing the thing where Visual Studio takes forever? Yeah. Okay. Map of meta tiles. So there's the first one. GID is 1. Is object is false. It's the PNG. There's the full path to the PNG. It has no export ID. So that is technically right. here's where we're going to process the whole thing and generate our metatiles. Let's go back to where load map is called. I want to see if... Okay, so we get out of there with no issue. Those are our metatiles that we just generated. So map metatile to file system item. So obviously there is no file system item to map this to. So I wonder if the first step is we add to the current file list those metatiles that we just generated in order to essentially kind of trick, well, but the map metatiles, I was going to say in order to trick this into working, but the map metatiles is only ever going to refer to that one PNG that we're using as our main background, and we are not using anything else. So normally what we would have, we'd have multiple PNGs. I'm wondering if we need to kind of fake it to make it work, like add to the map metatiles these other metatile files that we generated and ignore what would have been the only metatile list we would look at. I think that's what we want to do, and then from there, and then we need to also add the files to, what does this actually do to this list? So it checks to see if it exists, if the PNG exists, and then checks to see if the sprite exists. Oh, it checks to see if a metatile exists or a sprite exists. Doesn't actually care about the PNG itself, which is good because we don't care about that for what we're doing here because we're not converting. So I think that's what I want to do. I think what I want to do is I want to change it so that in load map, it no longer cares about the tile sets part of the map any longer, because that is no longer relevant to what we're doing, and instead it will populate where is it? It will populate map metatiles with the new metatiles that we're creating, and then we will also add them to the project files to do that correlation. So let's comment this all out because this is no longer important. And then instead what we're going to do is, let's see, where are we saving our metatile? Should be right in here, right? Okay, so we're doing the save here, and then project files. That gets load project gets project file count and project files. I thought these were globals, but no, they're part of that. Okay, so we do that, and then we call load map, and we pass the project files. Oh wait, first we call export map. And so that doesn't get, how does it do? that correlation. Get file name, item index. Map metatile to file system item. So, okay, so it's just literally doing a rename and look, and then, oh, and then it sets the export ID based on something. What is export ID? Where is export ID set? Oh, that's only relevant for sprites. Okay, right. So that there's not actually a whole lot to it there. And for sprites, nothing has changed. Well, wait a minute. So then if that's the case, then there's really nothing that needs to be done insofar as the project files, because we're not because we're not loading that into game meta tiles, which was being passed or is being passed there. Is that used anywhere else, or is that the only place that's used? Go to final references. Oh, so that's not even used in this function, so we can actually get rid of that. Which means that that was never necessary outside of... Okay, cool. So this is actually simplifying some things here, because what was happening was we were passing that stuff in because it was coming in from the project, but now now we don't actually need that any longer. So interesting. Okay. Should I just comment that out? Well, maybe I'll move all of these onto, or most of these onto, some separate lines and just comment that out. And then go to load map and comment this out. And then oops, that's commented out there. And then the map meta tiles are being used. What is that? Oh, okay, close that. So game meta tiles were used in a section that's no longer in use, which is just, it's looking for the matching one in the project, which is no longer required. So if we do that, then the only thing we need to do is update the map meta tiles, which was being done here, but is now going to be done here. So in this loop, should be able to just, actually, I think we can just use J. Right, so map meta tiles J. What was that code doing? It was doing a bunch of stuff. It's got a first GID. And the first GID is the only GID in most cases, but or it was the only GID in the cases that I was working in. So this means that I think it's just a one-to-one correlation. I think that's what we had said in a previous session I was working in. So like GID is equal to J. Let's do this because what's your problem? Oh. Alright, so what do I have to set up for this thing? I've got my GID. Is the source the file name? I assume that's what that is. Yep, that's the tile set name. And then what were we doing with it? So we got the source, and then we converted the slashes, and then we copied it to this full path, and we got the absolute path. So let's see. The full path is equal to, what did we give it? Temp MT name, right? Temp MT, that's, okay, so we want to string copy that. To that destination, what is the max size of this thing? Is it the max, whatever? And then the source is temp MT name, and then get absolute. What's your complaint? Is there no first? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay. Fine. Right or no? Destination source count. Yeah, okay, cool. So we've got that. We've got the absolute path now getting populated into that current instance, and then just set a bookmark here so I don't have to keep finding the spot. So then I have the full path. Oh, that's what I was looking for. The string copy S is what I was thinking of. That has, I mean, it's the same size for both strings, but if that were to ever change, this is safer technically. What am I doing wrong? String and copy S. Destination size, source size. Okay. All right. I was just taking a second to update the highlights. All right, so that's there. So then what's the next thing we need to do? So we've got the full path. Then we're turning it into a .json, which is fine. For consistency, we'll do the same thing. Right, we're just going to replace that so it's consistent with the way that had been working before, where it was expecting a JSON file instead of the metatile directly, which shouldn't interfere with anything. We're not going to bother checking that it exists because we know it doesn't in this case. Get tile set source. What does that do? I think this just looks for what the PNG name is. Yeah, so that's looking for the PNG, which I don't think I care about. What do we use that for? That's image full path. I don't know that we actually use that though. Right? Do we use image full path anywhere? String copy there, yeah, all that stuff, but like, am I loading that anywhere for any reason? What are you complaining about now? Oh, the max size. That's for the image, full path and name, file system, item. And then it takes the image full path and looks for the metatile file, but does it actually do anything with that afterwards? Like, do we try and load that PNG? No. And then when we do this call to the mapping, the current file list, that lists, it's not even a current file list. Map metatiles, current item count. This isn't even looping. This is just taking the one item. Is that even right? Current file list. What is that? Where is that being used? Current file list. Is that the only place that's used? Is Sprite? Oh, no, that's being updated here. That's the thing that I was thinking of that's global. Do we use that for anything? Find all references. So this isn't used at all. We can comment this out. Just so we don't try to use it accidentally. So this is going to do our load, and then we're going to come in here. I am confused about this. Let me explain. The reason I'm confused about this is current file list is a pointer to a structure, and it's a pointer to a structure which we don't seem to be actually populating correctly in that part of the tool. Like here we're allocating memory for it and we're zeroing it out, and then when we, let's see, so now we're in this part of the code that is exporting the map, and we are looping through the project file count, which would come from load project, and we are are checking to make sure the files exist, and if the file does exist, then we put it into the current file list. We don't do that for the metatiles. If it's a sprite, we then do some other stuff that we are no longer doing here for metatiles, which we, right, yeah, we took that out. And then we're calling export. And then export calls load, and but in this loop, after the load, why are we only doing this to, unless we're using, maybe I misread that. Let's take a look. After this load, map metatile to file system item. Current file list. We're actually doing anything. Index is, oh, item index is passed in. Current item count. Current item count is incremented, I assume, somewhere. It is. Okay, so that's incremented. Oh, and then added to this list. Okay. Okay, that was where I was having a hard time understanding what we were doing. So we're looping through the metatiles that came back from loading the map, and then we are mapping it to this list of files. But nowhere in this, the whole point of going through all this is that nowhere in this do we actually care about the PNG file. Or ever try and reference it by the PNG file name. So we save the metatile, we then can set the GID, then we're going to make this full image name PNG, even though we know that that doesn't exist, because that's all that really matters, is that we just have that there. And then get file name, we just want this to be populated. And, you know, again, this is because I'm trying to kind of keep it the way it was working. We can always circle back and get rid of some of this, because it's definitely not the most straightforward process. It's a little bit on the convoluted side, but that's fine. It's more so just to kind of keep things consistent for the rest of the code, and then, you know, I don't need to do that on stream. At some point I can come back and later and do this myself without having to bore everybody by making them watch me do this. So what should happen then is, as we go through here, we should see that we are populating map metatiles with, what is this? Map metatiles with the appropriate information. So where am I? What did I break? Where's my call stack? I'm in export, I'm in load. Image is that image full path is empty. What is this? Oh, it is try. I see. I looked at that. No, wait. Map metatiles. Oh. Right, because it's only got the one in there, but we still want it. So okay, we'll make a slightly modified version of the code that's here, because we do need to iterate through this, but just to find out what the PNG file is. So let's create PNG file. We'll just call it, because literally all we're doing here is what don't you like about why is there that comment threw me. So we can loop through here and we just say map what did I freaking call it? Map PNG file. So there should only ever be one anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to do okay. Maybe we'll do it a little bit different. I was thinking we don't need to do this at all, but we'll modify this. I'll get rid of the stuff incrementing M because that's no longer necessary because we're not updating map metatiles. But we do want this, and we do want some of the other stuff that we're doing here. Just have to find and remove anything that we're doing with the actual map metatiles variable at all. So right here, we're updating this directly. We don't want to do that. So we're going to replace this with image full path, right? And then get tileset source, and then get file name. What are we using this for? Where is that defined? Metatile source name. Oh, that's defined right there. This is going to literally open the project that exported tile set and just grab the image PNG. That's really all we care about. No, except we want to get the full path for that. So we have that, and we're just going to do system hooks get absolute path, image full path. And then map PNG file is equal to image full path. Hello. Okay. Cool. So then that gives us our PNG file name. And then when we come in here, we need to be able to load that image to do our construction of the metatiles afterwards. So this part, where is that? We just want to so this is just going to be map PNG file, C string. Just want to get the C name of that, and then we're going to create our bitmap, and then we're going to do the thing. Now, we actually don't need to load this every time because we know that this is only going to be here once. So what we can do is put a note here This is only true if you are only using a single tile set source, like you plan on. If your tile sets will use multiple PNGs, the code will have to be changed to accommodate this. Okay, so we've got that change there, which means that we should probably not, where are we doing that? Free. That should move out to there because we don't want to free that image until we are done. We do want to free the bitmap though. All right, so let's see what that gets us now. We should be in better shape because now we should have the actual PNG that we need. Yeah, so we hit the breakpoint, whereas before we were crashing. So J is what? J is 0. That actually, you know what? That's one thing that's not correct because 0 is no tile. This should actually be +1. I believe when we redo this mapping. Oh, you know what? And then that means that we want to do this actually. Well, no, I don't want to do that because that's going to make the code funky for the way the structures work, being off by 1. So let's, this is going to be J +1, which means that all the metatile files need to be deleted because they have to be starting at 1. This should be J +1. And then map metatile, what structures does it have in it? It doesn't have too much. These are not objects. It's going to have a GID. It won't need an export. I don't think we set up the file info in what we were doing before, so I think we're okay there. So let's rerun this and see what's going on. All right, so now we should have okay, and then if I do that, okay, that's our water tile. So we have our GID of 1. We have the full path, and then we get we rename it to PNG, even though that doesn't matter. And then we get the file name, which, why didn't that work? File name, maximum, oh, source file path, because, well, that should have worked. Image full path, current image full path is this PNG, get file name. That's weird. What didn't you like about that? Oh, well, I can't see it now. Let's go to the next one. I think it might have worked, but the thing is, though, that because it gets, I can't see it until this runs after, and we get to the brace current, that current pointer goes out of scope. So let's do it this way. Map metatiles J. So if we, oh yeah, okay, it is working. It was just a weird thing with the scope of the pointer and the debugger. Okay, good. So these things seem to be yep, that's all looking good. So let's if we get through here, that looks good, and then 7 is not set, which is good. There's no GID there. 6 should be set. No. 5. 5 is set to 6. 1 is set to 2. Right, because okay. I thought there were more tiles than that for some reason, but that's all looking correct. So now we can exit out of here, and there are no more metatiles, and we exit, and then we go to this. All right, so now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking for, it's going to be looking at these map metatiles that we just populated in here, and looking to make sure the GID isn't 0, because that's not a valid GID from tiled. So now what we want to do is make sure that this part is working. So current item index is 8. Current file list is set up there. So current file list 8. So we should see that there's nothing in here, and then when we do that, we get those assets. Okay, that looks right. And then, so it's just creating a list of the things that we just generated. So that's good. That is, I think, what we want. So let's just step in here and make sure that everything looks reasonable. So it's looking for, yeah, cool. So it's looking for the metatile and it's finding it, and then it's looking for the sprite, but it obviously doesn't find it because these are not sprites. And then so it's going to keep going until we exit out of here, and then we get to this part where we are now handling the game entities and generating our code there. Okay, so that's actually looking pretty good. Map meta tiles. So the next part of this is now we're looking for things that are objects, which there are none. So it will actually skip any of that code. And then we are going to go to the part where it is processing the map. Now the question is, we didn't do this correctly, I don't think. Map height is set to 210. Oh, maybe that is right. Map width is set to 32. No, that is not right, because, well, I mean, it's right in the sense that that's what the map has here. If we go to map properties, right, I believe that is what it is set to, 32 by 210, but remember, we're turning these into metatiles that are 16 by 16, so we should get, I don't have to do this math in the calculator, we should get 16 by 105 as our height and width, and we are not, so that means that load map is not changing the width and height to reflect that change in the tile sets. So that means we will try to write more data than we had before, which is no good. Let me just do this. So right before we exit, we probably have something called map height. Yep, we do. It's a pointer, and we're just going to divide that in half, and then same thing with the width. I guess what we could do is we could say what we want to do is we want to assert that, oops, add one too many parens. No, I didn't add the right parens to the thing I wanted to add it to. Okay. So we can check and say, why aren't you assert? We can check to make sure it's divisible by 2. Oh, mod 0, that's not going to work. That should be a 2. Map height pointer divided by 2 equals 0. Where do I have my other asserts here? Yeah. Should just be a Boolean check. What is your problem? So map height mod 2 equals 0. That's weird. Okay. I don't know why it was complaining about that. So we're just saying if we were to divide this by 2, there's no remainder. That's what the modulo does. So that it divides evenly. Okay. So we have that. And then we do the division. So we're good there. Let's run. Let's see, where's the next point that we actually care about right now? Map object. Okay, we already have a breakpoint there. So there's the map height. It's 105. So we write that, and then we do some looking up and stuff like that. This part is all, none of this has really changed. If we haven't done a normalization on this part of the map, create a table to look up the map tile value. Lookup table. Okay. If lookup table map buffer P equals 0 and map buffer doesn't equal 0, map buffer P map buffer. Those are all 0, almost all zeros. Why are they all zeros? Because when I remap the map, we did not follow the same rules as tiled. That's why. So let's fix that. So we rebuilt our map using the metatiles, and if you recall, I changed it so that it exports with the metatiles using tile 1, etc. We don't want to do that. We do want to do that, I mean, but we don't want to have the same problem when we are remapping the map after we've built those metatiles, right? So we loop through and we find if a metatile already exists, and if it does, we grab the index for the thing, and then we copy over. Okay, so this should be +1. And so should that. So basically we just have to make sure to increment the same way so that we don't have a bunch of zeros like we see in there for the map buffer. So that should fix that so that now we'll have a bunch of 1s, and that'll map correctly to the water metatile anyway, which is what we want. All right, so we're going to loop through and we're going to say, hey, we don't really have this in our lookup table and it's not a 0. So that's fine. And then lookup table doesn't have any lookups, or it just added the lookup. So that's cool. And then it's going to look in the map buffer and it's going to remap everything. It's going to remap. Look up the table, look up the tile in the set of metatiles that we have loaded, pass based on the GID. Map metatiles, GID. Okay. That works. If the GID matches, then create the reverse lookup. Yep. Okay, cool. So now we just set that in map palette, palette count, map buffer. Okay. So map buffer, in theory, might get remapped, but it's probably going to be the same because we're doing it linearly anyway in the way that we're generating these GIDs. So I don't expect anything to have changed there. And then once that's done, we write palette information and then some more palette information. Okay, so that's all. What? Uh-oh. Let's see where we went wrong here. So image full path 1 PNG. Replace the extension metatile file as 1.metatile, and then string length metatile file, string copy, metatile file, file info name. Oh, that's no good. So the file info is not set. Where does that get set? That is the question. I don't really know. It obviously isn't set here. I guess it's probably we were mapping to the file list, and that's not happening anymore because we're not loading them into that file list in the same way anymore. Right, so we're not doing... Well, so we're creating these entries, though, for the metatiles. So why is that not current file list? Because it's not in the project files, is that why? Project files, get absolute, project files, file.name. Okay, so we were setting it up here in the project files. Project files, project file count dot file. Full path string copy. That, yep, if file exists. That's getting the pointer to it, so it's loading it from that into project files. Okay, so the project files stuff is being loaded there, and then we're doing export map. And if we look back here, I don't see project files actually being referenced there. So why is that relevant? Oh, because current file list, putting into there, and then load metatile. Is load metatile doing it? No, that just reads the structure of the thing. So if that just reads the structure, get file name. What is this? This is, no, I've gone too far back. So is it in load project? Load project. Yeah, so this is where it's iterating through that, and project files is passed into there. I guess what I'm not 100% clear on is how we get to the point that we're getting to where it is, it's literally just looking for the the file name like that, and the file info, like map metatiles. If we look for all references to that, where would it have been doing that? There's not that many places where we're working with it. And I assume that we're just kind of assigning the pointer to the thing. What I don't understand is if we are maybe it's in load map. I mean, that would make sense in load map. When we load the tile set, we would want to compare it against the project files, but we don't pass that, right? We pass the map metatiles, which would have had it for it to look into. Okay, but that still doesn't explain, like, map metatile file takes has a metatile, blah blah blah. Map metatile itself has a map metatile file in there. Info. Okay, so we were doing it in find matching, but we're, oh, we commented that out. That's why. Okay. Okay, that's making more sense now. So, and this is what, this is load map. Okay. Yep, that makes more sense. So what was happening was we were coming in here and looking for the matching metatile, and then that was what was doing that set. But obviously it doesn't exist there anymore. But you know what we can do? We can move this. We'll do this. We'll move this to here, because we're although game metatiles doesn't exist anymore, so we can't do it that way. Game metatiles is being populated with the file info. Can I just populate that properly and call it a day? Is this a pointer, or is this a, so this is a pointer to a map metatile file, which we won't have anymore. game metatiles. Game metatiles, pointer, and then that's when we do the load map. And then we were doing the load metatile here when we found it. In that and game. That's interesting. So that's such a weird random way of doing this. It's kind of like I'm doing it backwards for some reason. So wait, so I'm looking for the name of the metatile here using that information instead of just using what's actually what's already there. And what's the matter with this now? Nothing. I think that's just an old error. Let's see. Because I think what we can do at this point is just say, yeah, the file info is null. I don't care about that because what I was trying to do was get the name of the file that has the metatile, which is this, and just rename it to .chr, and then load that metatile and then write the CHR. Like I load the collision and export it, and then I export the CHR to exported image, which is when it, yeah, that's fine. So yeah, I think we don't need to do it this way. I think we can just use... I'm kind of not sure why I was doing it this way in the first place, to be honest. But, okay, that should work. So let's see. So now metatile temp has 1.chr. We load the metatile, which I think we did, and then we export it. Metatile to image, export CHR. So in theory, there it is. And you know what we can even do? We can look and see. We can actually look and see what that looks like through the magic of YYCHR. It should just be a solid block of, yeah, and it's this color. I mean, the palette is wrong here, but that is correct, and it's a 16 by 16 long ways. That looks good. If we change the palette, you know, switch to a blue color that's closer to what we actually want, that looks good. So then we generate our ink bin and all that other stuff. So let's see if we go to the next one and try the same thing. If we actually get another CHR file that looks good. There's two. That should have something in it besides just the solid color. Yeah, there's our little wavelet thingy. Again, the colors are not correct. This should be like that, right? But that is cool. That is the right idea. So that tells me that this part's working okay, and we didn't crash on the full export completion. We have a bunch of CHR files now that got generated. So let's see here. This should be interesting if we try and assemble the game and see what happens. We will replace those files. Untitled, how far up the map are we? Oh, it's right there. So we should see right away, like, how we did. Right? Unexpected garbage characters, which is one.palette. I think probably we're gonna be missing all of the palettes, probably, and maybe the character files. That's a simple thing to fix because we can just tell it to generate it in the right folder next time. Unexpected trailing garbage characters, metatile palettes. Okay, let's take a look. Metatile palettes.inc. One is inc1.palette. Okay, what don't you like? Do you not like a name called one? Is that what we're gonna have to do? Unexpected trailing garbage characters. Oh. This is what it is. It's not gonna like this. Yeah. Okay. This is simple enough to fix. It's just stupid. Not on the part of this stuff. It's on the part of me forgetting that you can't do that. So we gotta name our metatiles something besides just the number, because for the labels it does not like that. Where are you? Oh, okay, that's why. %D, we'll just call them all like M1 dot, you know, M something, or you can even do metatile underscore. Let's see if that works better. Metatile, char, there's startup palette. Okay, let's try this again. That worked. It didn't complain, it looks like. Assets. Okay, that created the files correctly. That was silly. Okay, so we have that. We're going to need to fix the fact that the palette files are not being put into the right place in that export folder, but that's okay for this moment. I just want to see if what we generated actually worked. It looks like the character files are also not being put in the right place, but again, not the end of the world. Alright, so why... That's interesting. So why didn't it complain about that? Metatile dot ink. I guess... Okay, I'm not sure why, but it didn't complain. Ink bin. That's the map. That's the map objects. The map data is just that. It's just map data. Check player collision, metatile palette table, metatile palettes, palette tables, metatiles.bin. Is it just that? We just combine it? I can't remember. I think so. Okay, so let's see how awful and broken this is now. So title screen works, and press start. I can't because my buttons got remapped with the other controller. This is not even connected. Nope. All right. Here I was thinking that it was connected. Certainly that helps to have your controller actually set up and connected. All right, let's see. Am I still in frame properly here? I am. Okay, good. Hey, how's it going? How you doing? Oh, my controller's still not mapped properly. What is going on? Oops. Okay. So this still appears to be the old map with the new meta tiles. Why? So that's interesting. So the new graphics are there, but the map is wrong. How is that possible? I guess... map1.bin. Oh, because those are old. Why didn't those get updated? Let's re-export everything here. Doing all right. My evening is doing pretty well. We're getting through these changes here finally for the way that we want to export things, and I think we might have finally gotten this working. Although, oh, because I renamed this is not map1.bin, it's testing. Hey Deedle, I am not using banks or character RAM right now. I am just using straight up standard character ROM and no banks at this point because it's not necessary yet. So we'll see if that changes. But right now, the problem I'm running into is just because it hadn't exported the file name correctly. So when I rebuilt the project, it did not have the new files, which meant that the new map did not get loaded. So, all things that make sense, just a little strange. Okay, so now the question is... Oh, I know what happened. Oh, that's so lousy. Why? How did I let that happen? Let's just take a look at this for a second here. So our characters all look, the metatiles all look like what I would expect. Except the colors are wrong, but I mean, that is okay. I mean, it's not okay, but it's okay for the purposes of what we are doing here. It actually looks like the palettes got loaded fine, sort of, but what's happening is we are skipping. It's writing out, instead of writing out the data correctly in 8-bit values, it looks like it wrote the 16-bit values and didn't remove the spaces. Yeah, so instead of being 1 1 1 1 1, it's 1 0 1 0, which means we're missing half our data, which is no good. All right, so let's see. When we go to write the map out, after we remap everything here, map file, map palette, write map file, hardcode the sprite palette lookup. All right, so here we're doing the write out, and this is noob question. What's the difference between inkbin and include opcodes? So inkbin is, you're saying I'm including a binary file. So like in this case, I am including all my character data for, or actually that's not true, but anyway, it's, yeah, I'm saying I'm including this as binary data, so just use it as is. Don't do anything to it. Don't try to assemble it or anything like that. Include is saying this is actually an assembly language file, so you should try and process it as an assembly language file, and check the code and make sure that it's valid. And so if I were to do that with this binary code, of course it wouldn't work because it's not valid assembly. So it's just a way of kind of breaking up my files into multiple, my code into multiple files. And then for this stuff, it's a way of breaking up my data into multiple files as well. So yeah, so like for my character data, it's going into this shooter.char.inc file, which is just assembly. And then when you go into that, it's actually pulling in this binary here, but then some additional assembly code. So it's just a kind of way of organizing what you're doing. All right, so quick and dirty. Oh, that's so gross, though. It's going to be so slow to write the file out that way. So what has to happen is I have to write these values out as 8-bit values instead of 16-bit values. Because otherwise it can't process the map correctly. So we'll just do a quick loop. And because there's the type mismatch, I can't just do a mem copy because it'll have the same exact problem. What I have to do is I have to say I want to do this to map buffer and it's going to say, hey, you know, you're going to lose data by doing that. And I'm going to say, yeah, I don't care. What I actually want to do is just, I mean, technically, I guess it's not necessary to do this. Yeah, it's not necessary to do this in this direction. So I'm just saying I only want the first byte of the 2 bytes that make up the 16-bit version of that thing, and then small map buffer, and now let's write that. because writing 1 byte at a time is just really bad for the file system. It just doesn't. It's slow and it's gross, and I'm not going to do it. So instead, what we can do, the only thing that changed was the map stuff, so we'll just rename these here and copy them over. So so I just did it in memory, and then I wrote out the file in one shot, just to do that a little faster, because it will actually potentially slow down things. That's where you don't want to be taking a hit, is on writing out something like that, especially with a lot of bytes, depending on the map file size. All right, let's reassemble this and see if it's any better. I don't know that it read it again, so let's try that again here. Aha, okay, so good news. It did appear to find some of what it was supposed to, but it does not look like it's 100% correct. So let's take a look at this. Oh, no, actually, wait, is that right? Where's my map? Where's the map? Where's the map? Okay. That's 2 metatiles, and that's 2 metatiles. So, no, it didn't. It only did 1. And then if we look at the tiles that it's using, okay, so that's interesting. So it's tile 5B, 5-9, 5A, 5B, and 5C. So that maps to 5-9, 5A, 5B, and 5C, which isn't correct. Should be these, like for the beginning of the, it could be these, but it shouldn't be the very beginning ones, because that's the water. It's closer, so let's take a look at what we actually have here. Interesting, the color is correct. I'm surprised it's not reflecting that properly here. What palette is it saying it's using? Well, that is the right palette for the house. So something is right, but it's still not 100% correct. Okay, so what? So let's take a look at the raw data and see if we can make sense of anything here. The width of this map is 16, so let's see if we can visually see if we make this the same width. See if there's anything that's obviously wrong when we get to the bottom here. What is 69 in hex? That's 105. Oh, okay, so that's the height. And then, wait, it only wrote the height. I forget what the format of the file is, so you'll have to bear with me a second to just double check that what's in here is right. So it will go do a bunch of stuff in the map file. It will then write the map palette for why. Oh, okay, yeah, it wrote the height first, and then it writes another 4 bytes for the palette. So let's get rid of, I just want to look at just the map data here. The sprite palette lookup is another 4 bytes here, and then write how many lookups we have for the map. There's 3 lookups, and then those are the lookups. 1, 2, 3. Is that right? Right, how many lookups we have? Lookup count is 1 byte, and then lookup count. Oh, it's just the 3 bytes, so it's just these. Right. So that goes away. So this is the actual, just the raw map data. And if we look at that, let's see. What I'm looking for is this, although why is it shifted to the middle like that? Map width times map height, small map buffer. Should just be character pointer. Let's just double check this here. I want to see what's in the memory. I mean, it should be right, but that looks correct. Let's do the same thing I was trying to do here if I can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I want to get rid of 2 columns. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Ah, did too many. I don't know that there's a way to tell it. Oh, you can. I was just going to say, I'm not sure that you can tell it how many columns you want, but you can. All right, so, and then all I want to do is see with the numbers here, I should be able to visually see that left-hand side. Yep, there it is. So there's the left-hand side, 3, 4, 5, 6, which corresponds to not this, 3, 4, 5, 6, which are the metatiles. And we can even confirm that by going into here and saying NES asset tool 3 metatile. Oh, no, that's not what it's called. It's called metatile 3. And that correlates to that corner there. So that is reasonable. So everything there makes sense. So let me reload this file. Why is it not looking right here? If I get rid of those bytes, why does it have an extra 5 bytes? Are those bytes for something else that I'm missing? Or did I miscalculate when I did this? So revert. So there's the height. And there's 4 bytes here. And then there is another 4 bytes here. Oh, the lookups, it's 7 lookups? Right, how many lookups we have for the map? So there's 7, and then, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Although they all say 1, which is a little suspect, but we'll get to that in a second. Okay, that makes more sense. And then we have 3, 4, 5, 6 here. That actually looks good. So the map looks fine. So then what is the problem? I think it might be that lookup, because like I said, the lookup looks suspicious. It's saying there are 7 mappings, and then 0 maps to 0, 1 maps to 1, 2 maps, they all map to 1, which is wrong. So how is it doing that lookup conversion? We actually don't even really need to do that because everything is going to be in sequence now. What is map palette? Do we need that anywhere down here? We don't. We do. Right, the 4 bytes of the metatile. Well, that would be the same. If we haven't done a normalization, we really don't care. That's the thing. The normalization doesn't really need to happen anymore. So what was this doing? This was just looking at map buffer P. Did this get set yet? Lookup table, map buffer P. So what it got mapped? Palette count +1. And palette count got incremented each time. So this is a sort of flawed way of doing it because the palette situation is... Well, I'm actually curious why this isn't working. Is it because we have too many metatiles and so the palettes don't... No, but it doesn't go even past 1. So we iterate through here. We look it up in the lookup table, it's 0. And in the map, it's not 0. So we say, okay, lookup table. That thing is that, right? And then we... Oh, map metatiles only has the one GID. If the GID matches, then create the reverse lookup, and that's why that's the only thing that's working. So but the export ID is if the GID matches, then create the reverse lookup and map lookup for the actual metatile loaded into the PPU. But the thing is that I thought export ID was only used for sprites. So that's a little confusing to me. No, so it loops through here. Map is object and export. Oh yeah, so it's definitely for sprite. So why is it? I think that's actually wrong. So I mean, all it's doing right now is it's just exporting in the end 1, 2, 3, 4 as the palettes, which could probably just leave it alone. Like I can probably just this is obviously not correct because things have to map properly for the palettes, but for the sake of eliminating this code, which doesn't have to happen anymore, this was necessary when you had multiple tile sets that had different IDs and you needed to normalize it down so that you didn't have any gaps in tiles in the character ROM. But since we only have one tile set and we're generating the metatiles ourselves, there isn't going to be any gaps, and so there's no reason to do this anymore. And then that would mean that there is no lookup count, which means that it would write 0 and then no data. I think that's okay though. because it is just a direct mapping now, which, you know, simplifies things in some ways. So let's see. So this is now the old stuff, and this is the new map. All right, so let's bring this over to the game here and overwrite those files. Let's remake this. I think, let me try reopening this with the debugger open so that it maybe hopefully really reloads the ROM. I don't know that it did though. It seems like for some reason it doesn't want to do that lately. Okay, it's different, but I don't know that it's fixed. It still looks like it's too few, but also what are the tiles here? 59, 50. So those are the water tiles. These are also the water tiles. These are also, they just have different palettes. So it's still not right. Let me check something here. So there's the height. Let's go back to this. There's our row count, and our map palette is, I'm 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that doesn't help things. That's not going to break it, obviously. Then there is the, so there's 4 bytes there. There's the sprites, and then, oh, it says there's one lookup, which is not correct. There are no lookups. So, lookup count equals 0. All right, let's export and try that again. Hey, guess what? You just got blocked. Friend. Block. Block. All right. And let's ban. And can I delete that message? There we go. Okay. It's hard enough to concentrate without people spamming, so let's take care of that. I'm hoping this fixes it. I'd like to wrap here because we're at a good spot to wrap if this works. Alright, so let's say make and messin, let's close that, and shooter. Okay, so it's back to it being wrong in the same way it was wrong before. So the question is, are the tiles in any way different? No. I wonder if it needs to, if it has to have lookups. That might be the problem. It might have an expectation that it has to do a lookup because that was the way it was working before. So, okay, let's try a different way, which is, Just kind of a simpler approach, which is like if it's not in the lookup table to map it to itself, then map it to itself. Or even simpler than that. So oops, no. This, that, if lookup table map buffer p equals 0, and same logic as before for a different reason though. Right, so all we're going to do is we're going to set up the lookup buffer in the same way as before, but it's always just mapping 1 to 1, and we just need to keep track of it because the code expects there to be a lookup, even though it doesn't. It's kind of a waste in some ways. We can get rid of that later. All right, so that built and that ran. So let's do this. I'll get rid of those. Map 1 bin and map 1 object bin. Copy those over. Replace. And then make that. And then end messin. Now we've got nothing. But the question is do we have nothing because the palettes are wrong, or do we have nothing because the tiles are wrong? So let's take a look. I'm willing to accept that it's because the palettes are wrong versus the tiles are wrong. No, the tiles are wrong. All right, so let's look up. Let's take a look at what our lookup ends up looking like. There's the size, there's the palette, there's the sprite palette, there's our lookup. Oh, and it's literally all zeros. That is incorrect. What did I do? Map buffer P. If lookup table map buffer P equals 0 and map buffer P does not equal 0, then lookup table map buffer P equals map buffer P, which should be right. Hey Miak, it's going okay. How's it going with you? I might be missing something obvious here. Look up table map buffer P, not O. That's 0. Map buffer P is 1. P is 0. Lookup count is 2. 2? How? Oh, because, yeah, okay, because I incremented it there, but that's fine. So lookup table 0 is 0, and then we should just get that 1 is 1. It is, and then two is 2, 3 is 3, 4 is 4, 5 is 5, 6 is 6, and then we're out. That's what it should be. So there's 7 values. So yeah, so that is 7. And then map lookup. Oh. Oh. Wrong buffer. Okay. What is the difference, though? Whatever. I'm not even going to worry about that right now. Just map it and do it. I just want this to work. Okay, that explains why it wasn't correct before. Oops. No dot needed there. Shooter, replace the files. Really wish I knew why Messin wasn't reloading the file after I rebuilt it, but not something I'm going to worry about right this second. I'll experiment with that at some other time. Okay. Hey, look at that. That's almost like I knew what I was doing after several tries. Okay, that is close. So the thing that's not working is the palettes, obviously, but the tiles are working. The map is loading the right tiles here, just with the wrong palettes in play. Like if we look at 69, in here, that is 69. Okay, cool. So the palette is wrong. And some of that comes down to the fact that we're not keeping track of the palettes properly in terms of the fact that they're reused across the objects. But okay, that is excellent. So that means let's do this. Let's do this. This is cool. I'm excited that this is working. I can fix the palettes. That's not a problem. I just was really getting frustrated with the metatile stuff not aligning correctly, but that is excellent. So shooter.json, there's the project file, and I want to load. I'm going to use map 1 again, and what I want to do is I just want to grab this, and I want to use a rectangular tool, and we're going to draw a strip of these across here as our metatiles, right? And then let's grab something a little bit more complex and grab these tiles, and let's use these here. Oops. Okay, so let's save that. Let's export that. Yep, we're going to overwrite that. That's fine. We're going to process that. Every time I see an NES space shooter, I have Action 52 flashbacks. I like the animations you've done for moving. Thanks. Yeah, the artist who put those together is really good, and he sent those over, and that was part of one of the big changes that I ended up making regarding how the game objects are represented versus the game objects in memory versus the actual sprites on screen. To be able to do that, it was one of those things where I realized that in order to make that work, I had to do some changing there. I gotta fix this code now that's generating these palette files here, because it's obviously not putting that in the right location. I'm not going to do that tonight. Just want to build this and see what we get before we end this. We can come back to the next stream feeling good about where we are and just you know, working on some palette stuff, and maybe we'll stop on this for a little while. Okay, cool. Yes. Yes. This is exactly right. So it looks crummy because the palettes are wrong, but the important thing is the graphics data is there. So we've got the house here, and we've got the forest stuff here, and we've got exactly the right number of tiles. It's laid out properly. So what we need to do is we need to fix the palettes. We need to make sure that we are looking at the palettes and we're comparing them and saying, oh, right, these are the same palettes. And I think we're doing some of that in some of the ways that it works. But it's obviously not 100% correct, because if it were, then we wouldn't be having the problems we're having with the way the palettes are loading in the game. It seems like most of the palettes are in fact there. We might be... we're actually missing some of them, but some of that is fine. We can fix that. We can fix that by consolidating some things down and whatnot. It's not a... I can give you the quick version, Miak, if you want. This is a good time to end the coding portion of this, now that things are actually looking pretty reasonable, and I can talk about that. So, all right, quick version of this, I think. So it used to be much simpler. It used to be that I was using 16 by 16 metatiles out of tiled. I said that, you know, my tiles are 16 by 16, and then I had tile sets that were 16 by 16, and I would export them to JSON files. Let's close this one because I don't care about that anymore. Map1.json. And so this has all the different... Yes, I know. Thank you. This has all the map data in it. Although you can see there are some... Yeah, well, it's not even that it's that much more complicated so much as it's that we went a slightly different direction because of the way that the artist wanted to work on things. So it used to be using the 16 by 16 tiles, and we would just export that to this JSON format, and I would just straight up read this and then correlate those to metatile 16 by 16 tiles that I was manually generating using this asset tool by hand, which is a little bit cumbersome, but basically what it meant is, like, you could do things like, let's see, where's a good one to use as an example? Like, so I had, yeah, so like I have this as a 16 by 16. You can see that this looks right. It's got the right palette. So it was taking the PNG and converting that over to something that the NES could use in the export process. And so that was relatively straightforward because it was just kind of massaging all the data, right? It was saying, okay, yes, this is JSON, but I'm going to use a library to load the JSON data. And convert it into a memory buffer, and then, you know, have that memory buffer to write out as just a stream of bytes, which is what we were looking at in... I don't have it open right now. In Fred. So in Fred, you'd look at this map and you'd see these ones, and these are the tiles that are, you know, part of the tile, part of the map, right? That's how it used to work. In working with the artist and putting together some stuff for a screenshot that we were doing and trying to get working in the engine, we realized that what we really wanted to do was say, okay, tiled, what I really want you to do is understand how to draw a 16 by 16 grid, despite the fact that I'm working in 8 by 8. because what I need to know is I need to know where the attribute boundaries are so that I don't try and do something like, let's say, like this. Oops, not that. Something like that where, actually it's a lousy example too. Something like this. Like something like this doesn't work because it's too many colors. You know, after discussing things with the artist that I'm working with, you know, he's able to organize things in a way that I can visually see just by looking at the tile sets. What things are part of common attribute sets, and so, you know, I can select them very easily just by looking at this. And then he also has some stuff laid out here. And then what we said was, okay, well, we still want to use 16 by 16 metatiles to be able to save some space, because 8 by 8 is too big and we'll definitely run out of a lot of space really quickly. And so what I did was I wrote a routine that took the 8 by 8 map and converted the 16 by 16 tiles into, the 16 by 16 areas into tiles, and then compress them down by finding common tiles that you use the same 8 by 8 tiles. And then by doing that, I was able to compress down, you know, a rather large set of individual tiles here to something pretty small. That then gets put into, run through the asset tool again, where it takes this map and it remaps the individual 8 by 8 tile sets into the 16 by 16 tiles. And then we have to export this data all out to the NES. So it's a little bit more complex because we're auto-generating our 16 by 16 tiles and manipulating the data a little bit less directly than we were before, but that gives us a lot of flexibility, because then I can literally do whatever I want, and as long as there's space for it, there shouldn't be any issue in terms of, I mean, there's space issues obviously if I make too many unique 16 by 16 tile sets, and then there's the palette limitations too, like I talked about. But beyond that, I'm not limiting myself to drawing something that looks better, and if we have to scale it down, we can look at what tile sets get generated and see if we can reuse some tile sets by, you know, messing with the palettes or something like that to simplify things. So I think that was a full explanation. For a long time, I thought it was just a ZX Spectrum thing until I saw a really interesting video on how NES renders the screen. I'm not sure what you're referring to when you say it's just a ZX Spectrum thing. If you want to just mention here, I'm actually really interested in the microcomputers that were in Europe, because we definitely did have those, and I feel like we lost out. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the NES and the Super Nintendo and stuff like that, but, you know, beyond those systems, I didn't have a PC or any sort of computer really, I want to say until like 1992, 93, which meant I was like 12 or 13 at the time. Before that, somebody gave us a Commodore 64, which was a cool system, but I really had no idea how to use it, and they didn't really give me any manuals or anything like that. I kind of understood BASIC a little bit, and the TV that it was hooked up to, this is such a weird random thing to remember, but the TV that it was hooked up to had a problem. You know, CRTs occasionally will have a problem with something in the mechanism for the scan rasterization, where you just get a point in the center of the TV. That was a common problem, and TVs were expensive enough back then that it made sense to actually get them repaired. So my parents called a TV repair guy. He came over to look at the TV, and he noticed the Commodore, and he asked me about it, and I said, yeah, somebody gave it to me, but I have literally no idea how to use it. And he showed me a little bit of how to use it, how to load discs, how to load cartridges, and then he actually, when he came back with the part that he needed for the TV, he gave me a bunch of software that he had extras of or had copies of, and, you know, kind of showed me how to use them. And then he said if I had any other questions, you know, that I could ask him later. But like my parents were not cool with me calling this guy that we didn't know to ask him computer questions, which was too bad because he seemed like a nice guy. He seemed like he legitimately wanted, like it seemed like, you know, something like where I would offer the same thing to anybody, you know, regardless of age, offering to help because, you know, I'm interested in it and I want to help people. But I definitely, as a parent, can understand being kind of weirded out that a grown man is offering to help for free on this kind of stuff. Especially my parents were not computer people, so they did not understand or really care about my interest in the Commodore 64 at the time. So I had some very limited use in that. The ZX is a Taurus that could only have 2 colors in an 8x8 grid. So attribute, yeah. So I don't know where the attribute tables came from. I'm sure it's documented somewhere, and I'm sure I've seen it somewhere in the past, but I forget now off the top of my head. But yeah, so the 8x8 pixels, you know, it's you're really dealing with was it 2-bit color, right? You can represent values from 0 to 3, and then they map to those values map to a particular palette, and those palettes on the name table. You can only have certain regions of the name table use certain colors, so it makes it very challenging at times. That's why when you see stuff by, like, say, Franken Graphics and her artwork is just totally amazing because she is working within those limits, like for real. She's not doing retro style or NES style graphics. She's literally working within those actual limitations and generating some really amazing things. So the challenge here for what we're doing is that we've got to make sure that we've got the right palettes set up and loading. I'm actually less concerned about that, again, like I said, because, you know, it's just a matter of going through the code and finding where we're not somehow combining palettes to be used. The code for writing out the palette list is so blatantly stupid. It was literally just writing out 1, 2, 3, 4 for the palettes. So that's likely the issue between that and then the... trying to think, how does it... I think the code doesn't even necessarily know... I don't think there's even a way to do... I don't remember if this lookup is actually for the tiles or if it's for the attribute lookup. I'd have to look and see. I don't even know if it's mapping that. So that's something we have to look at in a future stream. Yeah, it's worth showing some of her work because she is really pretty amazing here. So let's see if I can... Did I do that right? No. Oh, GFX. So yeah, so she posted this the other day, and yeah, and I mean, this is like real NES artwork. What else did she post recently? So she worked on the art for Project Blue, and which is an NES homebrew, and a few others. But yeah, she's just so good. She's got such an eye for using the NES palette effectively. So Yeah, you should, if you're interested in NES graphics, you should definitely follow her on Twitter because her stuff is fantastic. There are a lot of other really great NES artists out there, so that's not to take away from them, but I think she's definitely, at towards the top of my list. So cool. So we got a yeah. The NES palette is particularly weird. That was one of the other reasons why this tool was kind of useful, was to be able to say, okay, well, what colors did it actually choose, and say, yeah, I don't really like that 0C color, and I can click on that, and depending on what color I have highlighted there, I can choose a different color, and then I can save that out after the fact. This is less useful with us auto-generating. Right, Project Borscht also. And Halcyon is, I think, a little bit less known, but that's if you ever played Anguna is the thing. That looks right to me, but my Eastern European spelling has deteriorated over the years as I've looked at and spoken less and less Polish. So yeah, and Nathan Tolbert, he runs Bite the Chili Productions. He's done a bunch of competition entries. He's working on a game called Anguna, which is a port of a GBA game that he made. He did a really cool 4-player kind of Super Smash Brothers style game called was it Super Homebrew Brawl? I think that's what it's called, right? Can't remember. Did I get that right? So yeah, so here's Halcyon. It looks fantastic. It's kind of like a Blaster Master Metroidvania game. I'll show that a little bit closer up so you can see. And then this is his other game, Anguna, which is being worked on now. But he's done a bunch of Super Homebrew War. That's it. No, not Super Tilt Bros. That's is that Morph Cat? Right? It's hard keeping track of everybody. Yeah, so they made Micro Mages and Bobble and Super Bat Puncher. Pretty sure Super Tilt Bros is the same guys. Right? If you haven't seen, Super Tilt Bros is an online playable kind of Smash Brothers game as well. But it actually at some point will run on a real cartridge online too, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, it's Roger Bidon. I'm pretty sure that's Morph Cat as well. I'm pretty sure that's, yeah, is that right? Maybe? Or is it? Oh no. Okay, I'm confusing. Okay. So it's Meow and Nicholas, who are Morph Cat, and then Super Tilt Bros is Roger. Roger, if your French is serviceable. But yeah. Sorry I confused those. So anyway. Well, if you're learning, if you want to do Game Boy, what is it called? GB Studio. A lot of people are using GB Studio, and it seems to be a really, really good tool. Better than NES Maker. That's not a slight against NES Maker. Don't anybody who's into NES Maker shouldn't take that as a negative thing. It's just it seems to be a more robust tool, and it has a lot of flexibility in terms of writing code in C and assembly and stuff like that. So there have been a number of pretty big and excellent games actually written using GB Studio. So, all right, I'm going to wrap the stream because, like I said on Twitter, I got to get up early tomorrow, and it's getting late here for me. So I will do my outro, and thank you all for watching tonight. If you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Clervis. I'm also available on email as zelius@gmail.com. I am on Video Game Sage as Zelius or Clervis, and well, Zelius on Discord, Clervis on Video Game Sage, but you can reach me there. I do have a Patreon and a Buy Me a Coffee if you're interested. Some people want to know about those things. It's not required. This is just something I'm doing to help kind of spread the knowledge and get people interested in homebrew, but certainly appreciate it. It generally just goes right back around towards funding me buying new homebrews or other Patreons. So anyway, my point is thank you very much, and I appreciate everybody who watches and comments and all that other good stuff. And I will hopefully be able to get episode 6 of the Zero Pages out here in the next month. That is my plan. I apologize for the delay in all of that, but it's been quite a year, as I'm sure it has for everybody. And between having the baby and work changes and new job and stuff like that, it's just been tough for me to work on. So anyway, thanks again. Have a good night, everybody, and I'll see you later. Bye.